This is the story of an animal control officer's strange encounter in the Appalachian Mountains. It was early one morning when the local animal control officer of a small town in West Virginia got a routine phone call. It was the new township doctor again. Lately, he had been receiving reports from her daily. She and her husband, who were both doctors, had just moved to the area. Originally, they had tried to set up a new office, but it's so rural where they were located that people were few and far between. So it wasn't long before the wife started feeling the people's need of an in-home doctor. As a result, she would often encounter homeowners' dogs. So she would call John, the only animal control officer in the county. And even though the people would often hide the dogs before he got there, he would take her call every time. But this particular call would be different. She would explain this house is way off the beaten path, and that as she was taking care of one of the children, she heard an odd noise coming from the bedroom. It was a low growl that sounded like a mountain lion. What was that? She asked the family, but they quickly shooed her out. After hanging up with her, John was baffled, as there had been no mountain lions ever recorded in this area of West Virginia. Regardless, he loaded up his lever-action rifle and the tranquilizer gun and took off. As he pulls up to the end of the long two-track, he marks his GPS and exits the vehicle. He spots a beaten path and begins making his way through the dense forest. After walking for about 100 yards, John notices something odd. The forest is completely silent. Then suddenly, he feels as if he's being watched. A chill was sent down his spine, but reluctantly, he kept moving forward. He continues for a couple more minutes when suddenly he starts hearing the sound of children playing. A feeling of relief swarmed over his body. Thank God I must be getting close. But as he steps out of the woods and into the clearing, he sees that there's no children, and that the reported house and all the outbuildings were completely dilapidated. Something ain't right here, he thought to himself. Regardless, he pushes forward. He gets to the front door and clutches his rifle. Slowly, he pushes it open, and he quickly realizes the house has been abandoned. There's pictures of the family and dinner still set at the table. Weird, he whispers to himself out loud, and he makes his way across the creaking floor. When out of nowhere, he hears the whimper of a child coming from the back bedroom. He reaches the door and pushes it open with the barrel of his rifle. There's blood everywhere. As he sweeps the room, he sees a tall, shadowy figure crouching in the corner. It was whimpering as if a child. It stood up on all fours with long, gangly arms. He began to step back, but as he did, it mirrored him. It was waiting for him to turn and run. Then suddenly the beast lunged at him, but he quickly shot twice. To his relief, both times he hit the beast. As it lay there, he turned to run. He ran with all his might and made it to his truck. He sees 3 claw marks in the door. Quickly he gets in, turns it around, and takes off, noticing in his rear view an old man that had 2 gunshot wounds in his chest. After getting back home, he called a doctor. An old lady would answer. "There's no doctor here," she'd say. "I've been living here over 20 years, she'd explain. He'd call around and nobody ever heard of this doctor. John quit his job and moved the next day, later coming to the conclusion that what he saw that day was a Wendigo. Like and follow for more. This is the story of a family's strange encounter while camping in the Appalachian Mountains. It was late one summer and 13-year-old Joey wanted to go camping for one last time, so he convinces his parents to take him to their favorite spot. It's located in a small bluff at the base of the Appalachian Mountains. And at the last minute, little Joey decides his uncle should tag along too. So that makes 4 of them. They finish packing up and head out. After an hour drive, they get to their spot and set up the tents. But before dinner, they decide to take a little walk through the woods. While the mother stays back to watch camp, Joey, his dad, and his uncle begin the hike. About 20 minutes into the adventure, the dad and the uncle are having intense conversation about what the NFL is going to look like this year. When suddenly, they realize Joey is gone. They begin looking around frantically and there is no sight of him. "Joey, Joey, where are you at?" Nothing. They have no idea when he disappeared or where he headed. They begin to panic, so they decide to go back to camp, hoping maybe he's already there. But as they approach camp, much to their dismay, they do not see Joey. And just as they're preparing to tell the mother, they hear something. It's Joey. "Help! Help!" They begin running towards him. "What's wrong? What's wrong?" "There was a monster in the woods." The father and uncle kind of chuckle to each other. See, Joey's about 13 years old, so he really shouldn't be scared of monsters anymore. "No," Joey said. It was a monster. He was wearing a hood." "Oh, come on, Joey. Now you're just making things up." "No, I'm not making it up." "Okay, buddy, let's have some dinner." So they all sit around the campfire and eat dinner. And not long after, night begins to fall. And as they're all sitting around the campfire, Joey's mother asks him if he wants some s'mores. "No," said Joey, "I want to go home." "Are you sure?" his mother asks. "Yes, I want to go home now." "All right, well, let's go home." So Joey and his mom go ahead and leave and take her car home, while the dad and the uncle stay back and pick up camp. So about an hour or so later, the father and the uncle finish loading the Jeep and take off. They've gone about 5 or so miles when suddenly the father sees something. "What the fuck? Did you see that? Did you see that?" "See what?" says the uncle. "I swear to God, I just seen somebody standing in that 2-track. He looked like he was wearing a hood." "Ah, come on now, knock it off," replies the uncle. "No, dude, I saw something." So he turns the car around and heads back to the 2-track. As he turns, his lights shine down it. And sure enough, there it stands, a hooded figure with his head down. "What the hell?" the uncle mutters in disbelief. The father puts the car in park, opens the door, and stands up. He yells, "Hey man, you alright?" The uncle opens his door and does the same. "Do you need help?" The figure begins to slowly pick his head up. It looks like a man with an abnormally large smile. He begins to slowly chuckle. Then it bares its teeth and lets out a loud screech. It quickly charges and jumps on the hood. Father throws it in reverse and stomps the gas. The beast falls. 1 minute part 2 posted immediately after at the top of my page. It hits the ground hard and gets up slowly, shaking it off. By this time, the father's to the road and slams it in drive. "What was that?" he asks with urgency. "I don't know," the uncle replies. Before he knows it, he's going 70 miles per hour. And just as they're getting comfortable thinking they got away, the uncle's eyes get big. He's staring out the driver's side window. "Look!" Joey's dad looks over, and there it is. The hooded figure was right next to them, keeping up with the Jeep. It suddenly slams into the driver's side door. He swerves but gains control, and then punches the gas again. They get to about 80 when the beast looks over at them and smiles once more. And suddenly, it would just stop in its tracks and stare at them as they drove away. They finally get home, never letting off the gas the entire drive. They decide not to tell Joey and his mother. The same night, the father and uncle would discuss what they saw. The only thing they could come up with was a skinwalker. That's not the first sighting, and it won't be the last in the Appalachian Mountains. Like and follow my page for more. Witness accounts of run-ins with the Wendigo. The first encounter takes us to Brunswick, Canada, near Grand Lake. This gentleman posted a story on Reddit in 2015, stating that he and his wife had bought the cabin the summer before. Their nearest neighbor was a mile away, and the cabin was located in dense forest. They spent most of the summer renovating the place, preparing for their first winter, which would prove to be one of the worst. And it wasn't just the record-breaking cold or the whiteout snowfall. The husband would end up having the most terrifying encounter of his life. It was a particularly cold night on the 24th of January 2015 when the homeowner's dog woke him up around 2 a.m. Figuring she must need to go outside to go to the bathroom, he gets up, leaves his wife sleeping, and lets the dog out. But as soon as he lets her out, she bolts to the wood line. And though he was yelling at her to stop, she acted like she didn't even hear him. She was on a mission. Irritated, he throws his boots and coat on and walks to the edge of the woods. He can hear his dog growling as she crashes through the dense brush. Next part. He stands at the edge of the woods, yelling for her, while shining his flashlight. He can hear her growling, crashing through the dense brush about 30 feet in. Then suddenly, the sound stops. What the hell, he thought? At this point, he was starting to feel uneasy. "Sadie! Sadie, come here, girl! Come on!" Nothing. He spots her tracks and begins to follow them. And about 30 feet in, he stops. "I felt like I was being watched," he proclaimed. And no sooner did he stop, he hears a voice behind him. "Babe! Babe!" Thinking his wife must have got out of bed, he turns around. But there's nobody there. Then once again, he hears a voice behind him. "Babe! Babe, are you there?" He turns around. What the fuck is going on? Then a branch breaks. He quickly shines his light where the noise was and notices something. What is that? He shines his light a little bit more. That's when a tall humanoid figure stands up and lets out a screech. He bolts out of the woods and there she is waiting. 3. These are real witness encounters with the Wendigo. This is the account of Charles Chuck Latimer, Michigan outdoorsman and hunter. His story would be published in the 14 Times magazine around the year 2000. Chuck was an avid hunter from Delta County, Michigan. Being that he was born in 1939, Chuck was experienced. His favorite place to hunt was Michigan's Upper Peninsula. It was there in 1983 when he would go on a hunt that would change him forever. It was about midday when Mr. Latimer was stalking a buck he had spotted early that morning. He would follow his tracks for a half a mile when he would step into a clearing, and there he was. Chuck would pull up his rifle and take the shot. Oh shit. He instantly knew he put a bad shot on him. Instead of hitting the buck where he planned, he hit about 3 inches low. Regardless, he knew the deer would eventually succumb to his wounds. The deer would end up running about 100 yards back into the woods. He would follow the track about 10 feet in when he'd spot the deer. But then, he spotted something moving behind it. He would take a couple more steps towards it when something would pop its head up. Take a couple more steps towards it when something would pop its head up. He couldn't believe what he saw. It was a humanoid figure with black eyes. The beast would then take stance over the deer as if protecting his food and let out a loud screech. Chuck no sooner saw this when he turned around and ran. His son Andrew would tell his story and explained that his father would only tell this story to certain people. And after his experience, he never hunted alone again. It affected him so much that on his deathbed, he told it one more time. You may not believe, but the people telling these stories do. Check out my YouTube for more videos.